We hit you with a double dose of Mel Kiper Jr. as we give you all things NFL draft plus some on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for April 11th, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching us wherever you find your favorite podcast, or you're checking us out by way of the YouTube page, you know we appreciate both. The show continues to grow each and every day. That's because of your support. Consistently checking in like you do on the daily is awesome. We appreciate that. And, of course, my man Ari behind the scenes is doing a fantastic job on the YouTube page. Without him, there is no YouTube page. He makes us look good and sound good each and every day. And Raider Nation, trust and believe, that is not an easy task. But Ari does a great job at it. We definitely shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, 707-654-4693. It's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. Plenty of feedback to get to coming up in segment number 3. Remember, though, if you do call the show and leave a voicemail, you only have 3 minutes. So I've seen a few calls as of late that get cut off, well, because I haven't reminded people that it's only 3-minute time limit. And some people just don't know at all. It's been a while since I said that. So if you call in, you only have 3 minutes. So make sure you go ahead and get that out in the time given. If not, it's going to hang up on you immediately. So do your best at that. 707-654-4693. Again, with that being said, plenty of feedback to get to. Got calls and texts. We'll close out the show. Segment number 3, today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Segment number 2, Mel Kiper Jr. from ESPN. He has pre-draft conference calls, the final one that he's going to have before the draft that gets started in April 24th, the end of the month in Green Bay. And really good stuff. On yesterday's show, you heard Mel talk about running backs. That was really our focus yesterday. Obviously, Ashton Genty being the headliner there. So today we'll talk about all these other different positions. You'll hear from him on different positions. I love this stuff when they have these pre-draft conference calls because they're not like it's a show you could tune into on ESPN and listen to it. It's all just a bunch of media people on there asking questions from different markets, asking about different players, different teams, just all things draft related. I eat that stuff up. I really love it. Hopefully you appreciate it as well. But you'll hear from Mel in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, all other positions outside of the running back. Also, segment number 1, as I mentioned before, double dipping when it comes to Mel Kiper Jr. He is a guest on my radio show, Joe and Q on ESPN Radio, noon to 3 Eastern time, each and every Thursday leading up to the draft. And he actually had to push back to 2:30 on Thursday. But there was a couple other questions that Joe Fortenbaugh and myself asked him that I thought that you'd find pretty interesting as well. So you'll hear from him in segment number 1, and you'll hear from him in segment number 2. Plus, a little bit of bad news for one wide receiver that's hoping to hear his name called pretty early in the draft coming up at the end of April. A little bit of drama that he's found himself in. We'll tell you about that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is Nissan, the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. As a matter of fact, stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week coming up later in the show. Now, I mentioned a little bit of drama, and I think that word is used too much. Right? People talk about a little argument or something, this, that, and the other, something very minor and call it drama. That's not drama. What Isaiah Bond, wide receiver out of Texas by way of Alabama, has found himself in, now this is drama. Ian Rappaport from NFL Network tweeted out on Thursday, former Texas wide receiver, current NFL draft prospect Isaiah Bond turned himself into Frisco, Texas police this morning for a matter related to an outstanding warrant for sexual assault. Frisco PD told the insiders he posted bond and was subsequently released. That is from Ian Rappaport about Isaiah Bond, the wide receiver, speedy wide receiver from the University of Texas. Now, that's drama. And look, innocent till proven guilty. I'm not here to judge him. I don't know what's going on. I wasn't there. Hopefully, it's a big misunderstanding on both parts, and hopefully nothing is to come from this, right? Hopefully, both sides of this work things out okay. And like I said, maybe it's just one big misunderstanding, and everybody is innocent when it's all said and done. It's never a good subject when you're talking about sexual assault. But when it comes to the draft and prospects finding themselves in kind of drama like this, seems like almost every year, right? It seems like almost every year there's something going on. We all remember Jalen Carter from Georgia. We all know how that shook out with the, drag racing and ultimately the teammate passing away and the student manager passing away. We remember Lyle Collins years ago that was involved in just questioning when it came to like a murder that had gone on. He fell out of the draft completely. And then the Dallas Cowboys picked him up as an undrafted free agent. We remember other situations that had gone on. Garyon Conley, remember the Raiders drafted him in the first round. That was the same draft that the Chiefs traded up for Patrick Mahomes. That was the draft that took place in Philadelphia. I was there. Remember it. They took Garyon Conley, number 24. He was accused of sexual assault. There's always some kind of drama. Some is major, some is minor. It's never good when you're less than 2 weeks out from the NFL draft, one of the biggest moments of your life. You're about to hear your name called and something pops up. Hell, we remember, Laramie Tunsil? Remember when actually at the draft, during the draft, I guess his uncle got mad because he wasn't going to give him some money, and he released a picture of him with a gas mask on as a bong, doing a weed bong at the time, and that's when it was all frowned upon. And remember, that made him drop in the draft. That actually happened during the draft. That was the Chicago draft. I was at that one as well, and we all were like, what in the world is going on? It's always something. There's always some kind of drama. But this, for wide receiver Isaiah Bond, who really is a really good wide receiver, is definitely not good. He did release a statement later on Thursday. He said, regarding the accusation made against me, I'd appreciate the time and opportunity to defend myself and prove the claims made false. I am in full cooperation with the authorities, will remain a willing and active participant in the investigation. Unfortunately, claims like these proved to be harmful to all involved absent full review. I kindly request that all reserve judgment until the authorities provide a complete report based on truth and evidence. And that was the statement. And that's really all that any of us can do. It's obviously an unfortunate situation, period, in the grand scheme of things, and hopefully everything gets worked out to the best of its ability, but definitely not the situation that Isaiah Bond wants to be in less than 2 weeks before the draft gets underway. I mentioned Mel Kiper being a guest on my radio show, Joe and Q on ESPN Radio, and asked him a few questions that he didn't answer during his pre-draft conference call, so I want to go ahead and bring that to you right now. We were talking about the cornerback position. We've been talking about cornerbacks quite a bit lately here on the show ever since the Raiders released Jack Jones, and a lot of people talked about Will Johnson, the cornerback from Michigan. And then the other day was brought up, how about the cornerback from Texas, Jahdae Barron? So I thought, you know what? Let me ask Mel, Will Johnson, Jahdae Barron, who's the first one that should be called off the board, or kind of compare and contrast the two. And so you'll hear the question and Mel's answer. Mel Kiper Jr. is with us here on Joe and Q on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. I wanted to ask you about the cornerback position. Will Johnson is the one out of Michigan. He's the ball hawk, but, there's questions about how healthy he is or how healthy he's going to be. He has his display coming up on Monday. He's going to do a little bit of a showcase. Jahdae Barron out of Texas also could be a ball hawk. Which one of those two guys do you think is going to go first?
Well, they're different. Will is a corner, and Will is an anticipatory corner. He's, to me, was a hell of a player. Then he didn't obviously finish out the year as a lot of players. That's the theme of this draft. A lot of really good players that are first-rounders or second-rounders got hurt, and he was one of those guys didn't finish out the process. But to me, if he had, he's a lockdown top 5, top 7 pick. I have him at 11 to the 49ers. I think about that 11 to 15 range is where he comes off the board. Really good player. Barron can play anywhere. So Barron's kind of a Miami Dolphin type of guy. They need help in the secondary. I think Miami's a good landing spot for Barron.
So there you go. Again, we had the call about Barron the other day. That's why I asked the question. The fact that he's healthy, he can line up all over the field. He actually might end up being a better fit than Johnson. Johnson's going to have a showcase on Monday in front of a lot of different scouts and GMs and just to prove that he's healthy. And then he is going to be visiting with the Raiders next week, matter of fact, on Tuesday. So, they're obviously kicking the tires on him. But at the end of the day, Jahdae Barron might end up being the best guy for the job, especially since he's versatile and he could line up all over the field. So that might be something that, Pete Carroll and John Spytek appreciate a little bit more. That would not be a pick at number 6. That would be a situation where you see the Raiders trade back maybe to the 10, 11, 12 range. If they do that, I would say that Barron and Johnson will probably, they'll be guys that could be in line in that range around there. Well, Ashton Genty's been a guy that we've talked about quite a bit, and on the mock draft that I'm doing on my radio station, Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, Ashton Genty went number 5 to the Jacksonville Jaguars, which really blew my mind. So Joe asked Mel Kiper about Genty. Obviously, all roads have led to the Raiders, but could he see him ending up somewhere else like we did in that mock draft?
Raiders sitting at 6. Everyone seems to like the idea of them selecting Ashton Genty. It's very popular. It's so popular, in fact, that if you're the Bears a couple picks behind them and you like Ashton Genty, you might need to think about getting up in front of the Raiders. Could you see something like that happening?
Well, New England doesn't love Will Campbell, Joe. They could, because that's the one team in Jacksonville at 5. If nobody there that they really love, and if they don't say love Mason Graham enough or don't want to take Tyler Warren there, I got Tyler Warren going to Chicago. It's like, say, if New England doesn't love Will Campbell enough as a left tackle, doesn't have elite arm length or ideal arm length, length, I should say. So that would be a possibility. But I think when you look at Chicago, can you imagine having Ginty with Caleb Williams for Ben Johnson? That's what they need, kind of a missing link, or even a Tyler Warren there. If Ginty doesn't go to the Raiders, I think Chicago certainly is in play at 10. Would they trade up for a running back, Joe? That's the thing you got to debate. Are you going to give up? And they have 2 picks in the second round, by the way. So they have some draft capital there. But he's the 4th best player on my board. It'd be interesting if they did try to move up to get Ginty. I wouldn't argue with it because of the player. My philosophy is don't take a running back in the first round. So giving up draft assets to get a running back, I personally wouldn't do it.
So you hear Mel talk about New England, Jacksonville could be in play for Ginty. So clearly it wasn't just something that, Lauren Brooks just pulled out of her backside and threw against the walls. Like, I'm going to show these guys and really throw their mock draft off. That's a real possibility. Like, we've talked about him going at number 6, and is that too high or not? He might go number 4 or 5. Look, New England's at 4. Jacksonville's at 5. They very easily could end up going with Ashton Ginty, and you heard what Mel had to say there. Now, he still believes that Ginty to the Raiders makes the most sense, but until it's actually done deal records, we don't know that it's going to be done deal records. The final soundbite for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. We'll get into many more coming up in segment number 2 when it comes to Mel Kiper Jr. This is about Tyler Shough and Jalen Milroe. In his latest mock draft, his 4.0, his final mock draft, he had them going at the top of round 2. So you'll hear Joe Fortenbaugh ask about those 2 guys. Then a follow-up from me about Milroe going to Green Bay. Just some really good stuff, kind of comparing and contrasting those 2 guys, why he has them going at the top of round 2 to the Browns and to the Giants.
Tyler Shough, quarterback Louisville. Jalen Milroe, quarterback Alabama. You have them going at the top of the second round. Take us through the logic between the teams that end up selecting them and why you have them where you have them.
Well, they pass on the quarterback, Joe and Q, because they don't have to reach. They can take the best player. Travis Hunter is the best player in this draft, and then Abdul Carter. So you get 2 guys at key positions, and you got 2 for the price of 1 with Travis. But you got to get a young quarterback. I said all along, you think about where we are right now with the Giants. It's Wilson, Winston, and DeVito. And now we add a quarterback to that law firm. And then we think about where we are right now with the Cleveland Browns. Look at that. Kenny Pickett's back. Well, guess what? You got to figure it out. You got to figure out the quarterback position. And to me, Milroe's the intriguing guy, too, because he looked great the first 4 games. And then what happened? The wheels came off. 4 touchdowns. I'm not counting the 2 against Mercer. 10 interceptions. He wasn't accurate. He wasn't even accurate on the deep ball, which was a strength, and not accurate short intermediate, not seeing the field. He looked like a different quarterback, but early on he looked like a top 5 pick. So how do you figure him out? He's got all the talent. He's got to fix his accuracy. And if you can fix that, you got yourself one heck of a quarterback. If you can't, then all you have is packages for his running ability, and that's it.
Mel, what did Jalen Milroe accepting an invitation to Green Bay to be in the green room at the draft? How much did that impact where you slotted him in?
Surprised me, Q. I got to tell you, that really surprised me because you don't want somebody to be waiting around. So is that them saying we got a pretty good hint that somebody's going to take him? Because otherwise, why would you do that? You don't want somebody coming there, a quarterback from Alabama, to be waiting until day 2. And then that puts more of a focus on him. He said, I can make this trip. I'm coming here. I got to be picked. If you're doing that, that to me, I don't know. I think it certainly opened my eyes. Like somebody's got to know something here, right? Somebody's taking him in the late first round or somewhere in the first round, but I can't say he's a lock. So maybe they know something we all don't know. But that was the surprise to me.
The quarterbacks are going to continue to be propped up, man. Supply and demand, right? Shough, Milroe, late first round guys or early second. I want to say I'm shocked by that, but I'm really not. Right? So anyone in Raider Nation is home from Milroe maybe in round 3, good luck. Seems like he's going to be gone a lot earlier than that, and seems like he believes he's going to be gone a lot earlier than that, especially since he took that invite to Green Bay to be in the green room there at the draft, and you heard how shocked Mel was that he accepted that as well. Again, that's just not something that you see very often. But that's what I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Coming up in segment number 2, Mel Kiper, the draft conference call, the pre-draft conference call, continue some more sound bites on the quarterbacks, on wide receivers, and more. That'll be in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is the 2025 Nissan Armada. As a matter of fact, the Armada's got the Player of the Week, and of course, it's being brought to you by Nissan. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Raiders forward as we look ahead to next season. I want to pick a different player each and every week. I really should. That's actually the assignment. But I think that Ashton Ginty is just the best guy for the job. Heavy duty, check. Rugged, Check. Conquers the road with capability and confidence? Yep. Dream big, go big. Yeah, I think that all describes Ashton Genty, right? When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Ashton Genty can do with the Raiders. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to deep dive into some more Mel Kiper Jr. draft conference call. This was from earlier this week. Only got a couple that I really wanted to bring to the table. Went a little long there in segment number 1, so we'll try to get everything caught up. But the first one, you heard the last little sound bite that me and Joe were talking to Mel about was Tyler Shough, Jalen Milroe. Well, he goes into a little bit further detail about Tyler Shough, about Jalen Milroe, just kind of breaks down a few quarterbacks, talks about concerns with those quarterbacks as well, guys that he has mocked at the top of round 2, again, to the Browns and to the Giants. Check it out.
Well, I think it talked to the right team, our Lewis Riddick loves him. I like him. I think, he looks the part. He's another, the quarterback that looks the part the most. It is certainly would be Jalen Milroe and Tyler Shough. They both look the part from a physical, athletic standpoint. 6'5", 220, 4'6", 340. He can spin it. His ball will cut through wind, and he'll deal with weather conditions. And he had a really good year at Louisville. For the Brahms, and this is the first year he played an entire season. That COVID year was only 7 games. Then he had the 3 years of injury at Texas Tech. So the durability is a concern. Matt Miller brought up the fact that Michael Penix Jr. had all those injuries, and they still took him with the pick number 8 Atlanta did. So Shough could be a guy, maybe the Rams at 26, although some think, hey, they're ready to go. They're not going to go quarterback. They're going to go for a plug-and-play starter and help that football team. Matthew Stafford's playing another year or two, and he's a great quarterback. We know that. He's a Hall of Famer. So Matthew Stafford's still playing at a very high level. So they may not, which pushes those quarterbacks maybe into the second. Does somebody trade into the late first to get them? Maybe they do. So I think Shough, certainly Jalen Milroe, are two guys kind of on the bubble for the first. I have Howard and McCord. Dylan Gabriel, I really like as a 3rd, 4th rounder. I think he's been under-publicized for the great years he's had, both at UCF, Oklahoma, and Oregon. So I love Dylan Gabriel. If he gets down to the 4th, 5th round, I think it'd be a steal. But I do think that Shough for Cleveland and then the Giants with Milroe, those are good fits. Milroe because of dealing with the weather conditions in New York. Daboll knowing how to work with a quarterback that. There was an accuracy question with Josh. I didn't worry about it, but others were always harping on the accuracy of Josh Allen. But you saw what happened there. He fixed that. If Milroe fixes the accuracy issue, he could be really good. But that's the issue. If he doesn't fix it, he'll be a bust. Well, no, he'll just be, I'd say this, a running quarterback who's in packages. He's not going to be a successful starting quarterback unless his accuracy improves and seeing the field improves as well. So I think Shough and Milroe kind of fall into that same category. Both are late first, early second rounders. And the Shough, when I watched him this year, it wasn't that wow performance. Now, he can make the throws, but when the crowded pocket got a little crowded, I know you can pick game plays out when he was okay, but for the most part, when things went awry a little bit and it wasn't perfect, like Shador had to deal with NFL conditions every play. When Shough had to deal with those that muddy pocket, right? It wasn't the scintillating performance you saw when he had a clean pocket. So, and that's the case with a lot of quarterbacks, but in the NFL, you got to be able to deal with that, and we'll see. But the talent is there. Like I said, if you could draw up a quarterback from a physical standpoint, it would be Tyler Shough.
Durability, accuracy, nothing that was wow moments for Tyler Shough, according to Mel Kiper Jr. Accuracy when it comes to Jalen Milroe, and without improvement, he'll be a quarterback that runs and has a few packages as well. That is the biggest concern that I have when it comes to Jalen Milroe. I know he has a work ethic that is super strong. I always appreciate that guy. I always say you don't have to be the most talented dude in the room. You just got to work the hardest. As long as he can improve that accuracy, especially on the short to intermediate stuff, he could end up being a really good quarterback, but he's got to be able to do that. Durability with Tyler Shough is the biggest concern, right? Similar to what the concerns were when it came to Michael Penix a year ago, because he had so many durability issues when he was at Indiana, not so much at Washington, but when he was at Indiana, he did. So that's something that they are going to have to try to overcome. That's a tough pill to swallow, but obviously Atlanta didn't have a problem with Michael Penix. They took him number 8 overall. So somebody is going to take Tyler Shough. Mel Kiper Jr. has him going to the Cleveland Browns early in round 2 of the draft. That's on his latest mock draft 4.0. So how about wide receivers? We haven't talked about wide receivers too much. We know Travis Hunter, cornerback / wide receiver, he's the number one guy, right? But what's going on behind him? There's a lot of conversation when it comes to Matthew Golden, the Texas wide receiver, and Tetairoa McMillan. We've talked about him quite a bit, the Arizona wide receiver. So here's Mel Kiper Jr. talking about those guys plus a couple more.
Is it Golden or Tetairoa McMillan as the receiver after Travis Hunter? If you're saying Travis Hunter's a wide receiver, who's the next guy? And I think Golden really helped himself with the year he had. He was kind of under the radar, had a great year. He had 2 good years at Houston, but took it up another level, another notch. Then he ran that 4.29, which was shocking. When a lot of people thought he'd run 4.4, he ran 4.29. So he kind of moves into that category for Dallas, for Arizona, teams like that. And then McMillan's kind of a wild card. I mean, he didn't run great. People say, well, he talks about volleyball all the time. He loves volleyball. But, he was a heck of a football player at Arizona, and he's kind of like a Drake London type. So where does he go? He's kind of a tough one to project. Some think Dallas. I have him at Denver, somewhere in that group. Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden III are all first-round caliber receivers. I will say this, Douglas, it may help them that there is a little bit of a drop-off after that top group because there's a lot of receivers in the second round, but Burden and Egbuka are a cut above, and maybe that gets them. I have them in the early second. Maybe that forces teams to think late first for them. So it has nothing to do with anything they've done. Burden's gone through the process, I think, pretty well. And tested well, and he didn't play great. He wasn't as productive this year as Theo Weiss Jr. was, but he was impactful in clutch situations late in games, and he's got a ton of talent. So Luther Burden III still could be a late first. Egbuka ran that 4.47 range. He could be. So they're going to be interesting guys to see where they come off the board because you could end up, let's take Hunter out of the equation. You could have Golden, McMillan, Egbuka, and Burden all go in the first. Or you could have just Golden and McMillan and Egbuka and Burden, or one of the two slide into the second, like I suggested. So it's a lot of mixed opinion on those guys. Even a few years ago when we had Smith and Jigba, we had Zay Flowers, we had Jordan Addison and Quentin Johnston, all went back to back in round 21. And they had higher grades than some of these guys do. So those receivers slid. So if they slid into the 20s, certainly Golden, McMillan, Egbuka, and Burden could.
Golden, McMillan, they'll feel like that they're going to be jockeying for the number one wide receiver behind Hunter. On my mock draft that I did for the radio station, McMillan ended up going number 1. He went number 12, I should say, to the Dallas Cowboys. My guy, Clarence Hill, he actually picked him to go to the Cowboys. And I was actually surprised that he took him over Matthew Golden, who is a Texas wide receiver, being there in the state of Texas. I figured, hey, man, they've got more eyes on him than they do at the wide receiver from Arizona. But Chill went with McMillan. So we'll see. I think that they're going to kind of go back and forth the whole time. Burden is the name for the Raiders to pay attention to. If he slides to round 2, I don't know if he's going to make it to round 2. The guy is a heck of a wide receiver. Had a little bit of a down year at Missouri. Egbuka, obviously from Ohio State. Ding, ding, ding. Chip Kelly knows him really well, right? Just won a national championship with him. So those are also some names to consider. Speaking of Egbuka, how about a little bit more on him? Mel Kiper Jr. goes into a little bit more detail about what he brings to the table.
Emeka Egbuka is I'd say professional because he blocks. He's unselfish. He's a great route runner. He can play slot or wide. He catches the ball in clutch situations. He had a couple concentration drops this year, but his hands are really good, and he's a great kid. And, he's a late first, early second rounder. I thought he'd look good in a Steeler uniform. 21, I think it'd look great in Green Bay. Charger, I think 21 with Pittsburgh. Chargers at 22. Be interesting there with Harbaugh and a Buckeye. And then Green Bay at 23. Down to the early second round, which is where New England's picking at 38. They would take a receiver. Jacksonville at 36. Talk about them needing a weapon there. So a really late first, early second round for Egbuka, who's I think a plug-and-play guy. I mean, you're going to get a lot of production out of him as a rookie.
So there you go. Mel Kiper Jr. talking about the wide receiver Egbuka from Ohio State, who's very familiar with Chip Kelly. Late first, early second. Maybe he slides a little. He could be available at 37. If the Raiders choose to go that way, you've got Bowers, Myers, Tucker, Egbuka, Big Mike, Genty. That could be some weapons, man. That could be a nice little offense if you're starting to put this thing together. Obviously, led by Geno Smith. Could be a nice little offense if you want to go that direction. Would the Raiders go back-to-back offensive players? Would they go running back at 6 and then say a wide receiver at 37? Would they do that, or do you think that they'd have to turn their attention to the defense as well, right? Or are they just strictly going to go best player available no matter who it is? They're going to let the board fall where it may. I feel like they're going to be a little selective with the guys that they get, but again, we don't know this staff and what their tendencies are because we haven't seen them together before. And obviously, for John Spytek as the actual GM, this is the first time he's ever had this, this opportunity. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll start to learn these guys' tendencies. But Abuka is a guy that I don't think we've talked about enough out of Ohio State. But since he has that familiarity with Chip Kelly, same as, Travion Henderson, right? Same as Judkins. Those guys, all those Ohio State guys should all be in play for the Raiders because of the Chip Kelly effect. The final little soundbite I have for you for segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, I just thought this one was really cool. Mel Kiper has been doing it for a very long time, like going back to 79. I was 3, right? So I wasn't thinking about the NFL draft when he started this thing, but how has the job evolved? How has his draft evaluations, how has it evolved? You're going to crack up when you hear how he got all his information. Like, he has the information now. It's easy for us to go to the internet. We can always get film. We can look at highlights, all 22, whatever the case may be. That's not how it was back in 79. Check out how this thing has evolved from Mel.
Back in the day, I used to tell people I had to spend maybe 8 to 20 hours a week on the phone just calling schools to find out sack numbers, average per catch, receptions, any statistical information, Jim. I had to call every school. Okay, not just the major schools, the smaller schools. You know how much time that took, how time-consuming that was? But that allowed me to do is get relationships with these guys at these schools, these football contacts. Some of them have been great friends of mine for 35, 40 years, okay? So when I needed a little bit of help when Justin Herbert came out of Oregon, you call your friends at those schools. You've developed friendships by talking to people on the phone, okay? Not texting and all that. So when I was doing all those calls back in 1979, 80, 81, 85, 86, whenever it was, that's what that allowed me to do in terms of calling schools to get them to send you tape, talking to whoever you could, that big dish on the roof back at Ramblewood Road. So you had to really work hard at it, Jim, back in those days. I mean, and people say it was wasted time. Well, technology doesn't. It wasn't wasted time because all those calls led to me finding out something else about a player or a young player because I was there. Who are the young guys on the roster to keep an eye out for next year or the year after? I learned so much in those phone conversations. Some were on a half an hour to 2 hours, Jim. Some went 5 minutes. But just to call initially for statistical information that you couldn't get, you had to call to get, helped me get so much else, a wealth of information from those schools and those people and those contacts that you found out so much you would have never learned before. So I always tell kids now, make those calls, get those relationships. Don't just text. Texting is not calling, in my opinion. It's talking to people, and you develop those relationships that way, and that's what I did back, like I say, all the way back to 1979.
Now tell me that's not a hell of a way to get info, right? What he's talking about, and I love the fact that he said, get on the phone and call. Don't text, call. Right? Get on the phone, start developing some relationships. And I tell everyone who's anyone, it's all about relationships. In this business and really in life in general, it's about the relationships that you build. If you ever wanted to take any advice from me, and I'm not trying to act like I got all the answers because I don't, but the one thing I know, if you build some really good relationships, good things could happen. It's about relationships. Build good relationships. Don't burn people. Don't burn bridges. You burn bridges, your reputation will follow you. That's never a good thing. You make really good relationships, and some good things could happen, right? It's not necessarily all about what you know. It's about who you know and the relationship that you've built. I'm just saying, just my little piece of advice there. But I thought that was some cool little story there about how the business, the draft evaluations and the analyst job that he does and how he's been so involved in the NFL draft, how that's evolved went back in 79 when he really got this bad boy going. So hopefully you appreciate that as well. But we do want to hear from you. Your calls and texts will close out the show. 707-654-4693. We'll do that next. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and text draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Raider Educator. He's back. He's calling to talk about a couple wide receivers from the Big 12 that he's got his eyes on after giving us some knowledge about linebacker Carson Swetzinger. Here he is, Raider Educator.
Hey, Q, it's the Raider Educator out of the 925. Hey, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate you putting my call on and replaying it the next day. Who would have thought me and Mel Kiper were on the same page, but definitely Carson Swetzinger, someone I definitely like. But wanted to call and talk about his mock draft. Mel Kiper's talking about rounds 1 and 2, and I love it. Ashton Genty, number 6, give me that all day. I got in a conversation with a couple friends that are like, why would you take a running back? There's so many guys in this draft at that position. You can get a guy later. My comment is, it's not about getting a guy. It's about getting the guy. And Ashton Genty, if he's available at 6, is the guy. Okay, obviously at number 37, Schlesinger, I've kind of gone over and told you why I like him there, kind of being the green dot player potentially. I kind of wanted to talk about the next one, the third-round pick, number 68. The next glaring need I see is wide receiver, and I'm a big let's get the best player available, but if we're talking about best player available in the wide receiver position around that area, around number 68, well, I might have beat Mel Kiper to the punch one day in advance, but I heard the podcast the other day, and he talked about 2 receivers that I really like potentially at 68, one being Jaden Higgins, wide receiver out of Iowa State. Now, a lot of guys are big T-Mac fans, Tedoroa McMillan. I think Jaden Higgins is T-Mac light. They have the same size profile, 6'4", about 215. Higgins ran 4.48. He had a 39-inch vert, but what's more impressive is he had a 6'7" wingspan. That's just a ball hawk right there. I mean, you throw up the ball, he's going to get it. And so I really like him. Like when I was watching him during the season, I was thinking he reminded me of Dwayne Jarrett when he was at USC from back in the day. They look the same, running in their pads, all the other stuff, same fluidity. Obviously, Dwayne Jarrett didn't do much in the pros, but coming out of USC, he was an absolute stud. Next guy is Jack Besh, the wide receiver out of TCU. Really like his game. He kind of got on the scene during the Senior Bowl week. Unfortunately, there's a tragedy where his brother was killed in the New Orleans terrorist attack, and he had a lot of profile about that.
Remember I said at the top of the show about the little 3-minute time limit? Yeah, the time ran out on Raider Educator's call. But thank you so much for the call. Really good stuff. I tried to find a point of it where I can kind of make a clean break. Iowa State wide receiver Jaden Higgins. I'm glad you brought him up. He's a guy that we haven't talked about. He's really good. He is really good. And for me personally, guys that come from Iowa State, I like them anyway. They are always NFL ready. Head coach Matt Campbell does a fantastic job. I was one of the few, and if you go back a few years ago when the 49ers drafted Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, if you go back to that process, that draft process leading up to that draft, I had selected Brock Purdy around round 4 or 5 for the Raiders, and I thought he was a really good quarterback at Iowa State under Matt Campbell, same school David Montgomery went to. They put out pros. Iowa State's got a nice little program. Matt Campbell's been talked about as a head coach in the NFL for years. I love what he does. So you bringing up Jaden Higgins, that's a really good one. As far as Jack Besh out of TCU by way of Vanderbilt and then transferred to LSU and then transferred to TCU after LSU, he's an interesting prospect. And the reason is because he's always injured. He's been injured at like every step of the way. You did mention the tragedy that happened in New Orleans on New Year's and, the passing of his brother. That did become a really big story that was talked about when he was at the Senior Bowl as well. But with me and him, it's more just the injuries that he's sustained. When he's out there on the field, really good, probably a tier 2 wide receiver. He's just not out there enough. He gets banged up quite a bit. So I probably would pass on him. But Jaden Higgins, I'm with you. I like Jaden Higgins a lot. So thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Mark in Spring Valley, Las Vegas. Says, Q, FYI, it's Lay's, not Pringle. Trust the fat guy. Anyways, let's talk about Zamir White. Can you really use last season as a true measuring stick? Nobody did good in that offense. Do you think in Chip Kelly's system he may be able to shine like in Georgia? He should be healthy by now. That's Mark in Spring Valley, Las Vegas, hitting us. And when he's talking about Lay's and Pringles, I was talking about doing the Pro Football Focus mock draft, and I said it was just like Pringles. You can't eat just one. I don't know why I thought that was the tagline, but hey, I'll take it from you. Like you said, trust the fat guy. That's awesome. I love it. So there you go. So Lay's. So I stand corrected. I'm not mad at that. And I don't know if you can trust what you saw last year when it comes to Zamir White. I don't know how fair that was. But the problem is that's what last year was from Zamir White. And this staff has no loyalties. This staff could say, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. He could end up being a guy that competes for a job, no doubt. But I think that the Raiders are definitely going to address that running back position a couple times because they want to make sure that they have their dudes. Yeah, he very well might be able to shine in Chip Kelly's system. but we don't know. And unfortunately, you're only as good as your film. That's just what the NFL is. I mean, you have time on the field, you have time on task, and if you don't use it to the best of your advantage, a lot of times it will be used against you. So I don't know if he's going to be long for the team or not, but it's a fair argument to have, and I could see him, having an opportunity to go out there and compete once training camp opens up, and but I think he's going to have a tough hill to climb for sure, just based off what we saw from him last season. So thanks so much, Mark, for that. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Sweet T Raider in Texas. He's calling to talk about the draft, what he thinks the Raiders shouldn't and should do with their first few picks. Here he is, Sweet T Raider.
AQ, Sweet T Raider down here in Texas. Just got some thoughts on the draft. So I think we should totally skip out on a quarterback in the first and second round. Cam Ward and Shador, they're good, but let's face it, last year these guys would have gone in much later rounds compared to the talent last year. And I feel the same way about wide receivers, so I think we should at least skip out on a wide receiver in the first round. I think that first pick needs to be Ashton Genty. We're not going to come across a running back like that for a long time. Second pick, do what you want with it. Maybe take it to that defense. Third or fourth pick, I think take a chance on Quinn Ewers. That's where we got Aiden O'Connell, and, he's been a decent backup, arguably one of the better ones in the league. So, for sure, maybe try to do that. And then with that other, if you take Quinn Ewers in the third round, fourth round, I say we get Cam Scatterboo or Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech, because I think those two young guys, paired with, Mosa that we just got, he can be a great mentor to them, and that'd be a solid running back room. Rest of those picks, maybe just try to help out that defense or, use them to beef up that wide receiver room. But thanks for the call, and, we just appreciate everything you do, Q. Thanks.
Sweet T, what's happening? Thanks for the call. So you could definitely pass on a quarterback in the first couple of rounds, right? I mean, that's a no-brainer. Again, that's the beauty of Geno Smith. That's what he brings to the table. With him in play, with his contract extension, you don't have to get a quarterback at all. In the whole draft, you can let it go by. I think that they will. I'm not a big Quinn Ewers guy out of the University of Texas, but you don't have to. You're absolutely right. I mean, you don't have to focus on that right now. It's something that I'm sure that they'll do. Maybe they'll go for a Quinn Ewers, but I would say that that's probably a day 3 prospect. I really wouldn't want to, take a flyer on him any earlier than that. As far as the running backs, Genty and Scatterboo, that would be something, right? You want to talk about thunder and lightning, boom, bada bing. That'd be something. So the Raiders still need defensive help. Wide receiver is a need as well. They do have options. They have 9 draft picks right now. So, they've just got to be able to fill the holes, right? Do the best that they can, fill in the holes that they have in place. And, we'll see what it looks like when it's all said and done. But the one thing that they can feel good about is that by acquiring Geno Smith at number 6, at number 37, at any of their picks, they're not forced to get a guy at the quarterback position because they have a guy that could play the quarterback position. Thanks so much for the call. I definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Guar B. It's been a minute since we heard from him. He said, love the Geno trade, but he's 35. As usual, the Raiders, if Shador is at 6, they will not draft their future, and they will not be in this position to draft a top quarterback for 3 to 4 years again. And they will not have a real quarterback learning behind Geno. This is the blueprint no other team will ever follow. Instead, they'll draft a dime a dozen quarterbacks like Will Howard, Quinn Ewers, Kyle McCord, and so on. Quarterbacks I know will be mediocre at best. The only other quarterback, if the Raiders organization had half a brain, is Milroe. High ceiling, but they won't do that either. Raiders will continue to be in the dumps in the immediate future. It's so predictable. It's intentional. Guarby, the forever positive Guarby with the text right there. Thanks so much. Appreciate you. And look, the draft doesn't even happen. It's less than 2 weeks from now. So I don't know. If Shador's there at 6, they may take him. They might not, right? If the one thing about it is if they don't take him, that should tell you all you need to know, because if there's one guy in the Raider organization that knows him best, it's who? Tom Brady. I don't think that you can argue with Tom Brady if he says, yeah, just go ahead and pass on him. Then clearly he doesn't think that he's that guy. I think he's that guy, but that doesn't matter what I think. And they have Geno Smith, so they don't have to go and address the position. I think it would be smart, similar to what it sounds like you would think, but again, that's out of our control. So we'll see. They have obvious other holes on the team that they need to fill as well. At some point, they have to get their franchise quarterback. Who is that going to be? I don't know, but I'm with you. At some point, they have to do it. I don't think everything's doom and gloom like you made it sound in the text, but I understand what you're saying. You feel like that they're going to be back to being middle of the pack. They're not going to lose enough games to be in position to get a top quarterback, and they're not going to be a playoff team, so they're going to be stuck right there in no man's land again. I understand the direction that your text is going. You just had a little bit more doom and gloom on it. The sky is falling still on your text. But thank you again. It's been a while since we heard from you. Up next, I just got time for a couple more. Got a call from Raider Rez from East LA. He's calling to ask a simple question about the Raiders and their finances. Here he is, Raider Rez from East LA.
Hey, Q. It's Raider Rez in East LA. Very quick and simple question for you. We have $50 million left in our salary cap. What the heck are we waiting for? What are we doing with that money? Like, I know we have to put a little bit of it away for the rookie class, but I mean, that's still $35-40 million. What are we sitting on here? Why aren't we using that? All right. Hope to get your answer on that and your thoughts. Thanks. Keep up what you're doing.
Raider Rez, thanks for the call. Honestly, man, it's pretty simple. They're not just going to throw money at guys just to throw it at them, right? I mean, they're proving, what I've seen so far from them is that they're not going to spend money just to spend it. They have as a matter of fact, with the free agents that they brought in this year, they're clearly playing the compensatory game as well, where they lost a lot of guys in free agency, a lot of high dollar guys. They filled them in with lesser guys as far as the money goes, the years go, 1-2 year deals. So they're looking to get some compensatory picks in 2026. They'll probably sign a veteran or so right after the draft. I don't think that they'll sign anybody in between now and then. If they do, it'll be someone really minor. But on top of that, you mentioned the money that they have. Who do you want them to spend the money on? Like right now in this part of free agency, there's not really anyone with a big enough name that's a big difference maker that you want them to go spend a bunch of money on. You don't have to spend all that money. There's a certain amount that you have to spend, but if you don't hit the ceiling of your salary cap, you could always roll it over as well. So you don't really, like my mom used to tell me back in the day, don't let that money burn a hole in your pocket. The Raiders aren't trying to let that money burn a hole in their pocket. They're trying to be very smart, very cost effective, and try to make the right decisions, not just throw money at a situation and hope that it's going to fix it. But I understand the frustration. See a lot of teams around the league, building through free agency. The Raiders are proving that they don't want to do that. They want to build through the draft. Raider Rez, thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a text from Keegan in Vancouver. Say, what's up, Q? It's Keegan from Vancouver, Washington. The large group of players that came in to visit at the same time is different than what we normally seen. They did that on purpose to establish the culture of compete. I know if I walked into a job interview with 2 other people, I would know it's go time. Love what you do, Q. Go Raiders. That's from Keegan in Vancouver, Washington. Great point. Great point. You bring all these guys in at the same time, right? You let them know that, hey, we're looking at all these guys. These guys are, they play your same position. They're these, that's a great point. Competition is Pete Carroll's middle name, right? That's what compete is all about. He wants to compete. Pete wants to compete, right? They put it up on the wall there at the Raider facility, right? As soon as you walk through the door, if you saw the social media videos as they were reporting on the 8th for the first day of, the OTAs or, their rehab and strength and conditioning and meetings, if you saw them walking in right there, ready to compete. Let's go compete. Whatever the thing was, it's always about competing. Everything that they're going to do under the Pete Carroll run is going to be about competition, and more competition. So really good stuff. I think you bring up some good points on that text as well. So we'll see how it all plays out, but there are some pretty big names that they had to come to visit, that's for sure, and they got more coming up next week. They've got Shedeur Sanders coming in on Monday. They've got Will Johnson coming in on Tuesday, and they're going to have more. They've got 30 visits, so I'm sure that they're going to use all 30 of them. Plus, they have a local day, too, where like USC players and others are going to be able to come in, and they treat that as the local area, even though it's not really that local, but it's the local area. And that's how they found a guy like Isaiah Palomao and made him an undrafted free agent a few years back. So we'll have plenty coming up on Monday's show. We'll collect some news and notes over the weekend. We'll see how things play out. Of course, we'll be back with your calls and texts and plenty more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. So make sure you have a fantastic weekend. Take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. And as always, just win, baby.